So how does unresolved trauma, when you're dealing with trauma itself, how does it impact you as a person, but more from the physical side of it?
So these negative emotions can create diseases in your body. Some people don't even have the mental and the crying or the other because they numb themselves, so they kind of learn how to deal with these reaction things. And then after they decide like, oh, you know what, I stop reacting because it's weird. So I'm just numb myself and don't have any emotions. So they learn to be like a poker face. But then the deep unresolved trauma is coming up as physical reaction, like for example stomach pain, digestion issues, or heart disease or cancer. There are so many diseases, or diabetes, which is related to these emotions.
This is Frank J. Welcome back to Grit Beyond Measure. Today, I have the opportunity to actually interview someone from halfway around the world, Eddie B. Kiss. But as always, for me, I don't like to introduce my guests. I like my guests to introduce themselves and kind of tell you a little bit about them. And then obviously we go into the questions because we deal with adversity, resilience, and anything in that construct. So Eddie B., over to you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what are we talking about today?
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Frank. So thank you for having me today. And
Absolutely.
I'm very excited about this interview. My name is Edith B. Kiss, and I was born with this name because many people is questioning where is it coming from. I am Hungarian, so it's a Hungarian name. So I am currently a trauma healing specialist. So I help people to go from PTSD to peace. But I used to be a petroleum engineer for 15 years. Why I eventually transformed myself or became a healer is because I started to have panic attacks back in my 20s. I was looking for some help, which I didn't like medication. So the first thing what they did, they gave me medication, and I was like, oh, this is even worse. So then I didn't like that. So I was looking for some natural remedies. So that's how I got into Reiki healing, energy healings, family constellation therapies, extrasense retreats. So what happened is while I was an engineer on my weekends or time offs, I was basically going into these places and learning these techniques. And I felt like I'm getting better, but it was still there, So when I got too exhausted from my engineering career with 2 children, with unhealthy body, I felt like I need to change. And then I quit my job and then I became a contractor. So I had more time for my children, for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the time when I was introduced to another modality, which completely changed my life. That was when I finally found solutions. Finally, from managing, I went to solution and finding peace. And that was so shocking for me that I was like, oh my God, I need to show this to people. So that was my reaction. So I was still a contracting engineer, but I was already establishing my healing business and I started to have clients because it just felt so amazing. And that's when I moved to London and then started.
Okay, so pretty much you started having panic attacks, and it was kind of like that opening door to like what's going on in my body, but I don't want to deal with medicine, so I want to take a different approach to it and stuff like that. And then you went from the engineering to contract, and then obviously deep rooted yourself into this type of domain of holistic treatment and stuff like that. So let me ask you this: when it comes to these different levels of traumas and stress, do you believe that everyone is dealing with unresolved baggage? And if so, like how should we go about it?
I don't think everyone, because it's related to what trauma happened to you, or what was your perspective to the situation, what happened to you. It's really comes out from there. So when you were a child or a young person and something happened, you can respond and react. And maybe as a child you were so wise or so different, coming from a very happy background, that when something happened to you, were just like, didn't take it seriously, and you didn't dive deep into like self-pity or feeling betrayed or feeling angry. You were just like, oh, it's okay, I don't care, and moved on with your whatever you were doing, So I think it depends your environment, your cultural background, your social, situations, your everything around you is creating your perspective. So whatever perspective the person had at that time when they were actually going through certain things, that what they carried forward. So
Right.
not everybody, some people can just respond to situations instead of reacting.
Do you think that trauma is always a major life event, or can it be something minute that you really don't capture in a moment and then later on it affects you?
Absolutely, it can be very small thing, like which you wouldn't think is traumatic. For example, I had clients who, when we were healing certain memories, one of the memory was like walking the first time to kindergarten, right? So he wasn't crying, but it was still a heavy weight to handle. Like, oh, this is the
Right.
first day my mom is giving me to a person who I don't know, and I'm staying that
Right.
whole day. So the person later, I talked to him and then he was like, yeah, I wouldn't realize that was traumatic or caused me such a big thing, but actually that was came up in the healing.
Wow.
So yes, there are. And then also there was another person who was on stage when he was a kid, and then how he felt in that stage, or how was his perspective about the situation. It wasn't traumatizing, but it came up as one of the
Wow.
memory which causing the current situation, the
Right. That's
current
very
issue.
eye opening. Because like you said, it doesn't have to be a big major event to cause trauma. And then my other follow-up question was, I was going to ask, can everyday experiences create long-term emotional wounds? And it's kind of
Yes,
like, you
yes.
hit it on the head. Like, wow, I don't think of it like that. I'm pretty sure most people don't think of it like that. They just go about their day and somehow, some way they shut it down. And, as you speak deep, you're talking about going into the subconscious and stuff like that. Then something triggers it to come back out. And then next thing you know, it's like, okay, I had this traumatizing event through an everyday experience and stuff like that. So let me ask you this question. Like, what are some signs someone may be carrying that relates to unresolved trauma?
It's when you feel like you're reacting in your life, you're reacting emotionally. Like for example, you having anger issues, or you cry a lot about things, or you feel like you are betrayed, or you feel like everybody is like neglecting you, and you have that kind of feel negative emotions, like things makes you sad, very sad, or and then you can like go into the rabbit hole or become depressed from that sadness state, or if you feel too deeply about things or situations when what is not that serious actually, right? Or so you kind of like going into fights or having like certain reactions which wouldn't make sense, overreacting. Some people call it like, oh, you overreacting, and
Yeah.
then you feel even defensive, like, oh, you call me overreacting. It's like, who's
Hmm.
right and wrong here? Is like
Right. I
that's
had that same exact experience back in 2019. I like woke up one morning, I was just crying for no reason. I'm like, why am I crying? Like I didn't know what was going
yeah.
on. And long story short, I went to my commanding officer at the time. I was in the military, and I just said, "Hey, I got to go talk to someone because I don't know what's going on with me." And upon going through that whole routine, the therapy and stuff like that, wounds were opening up that were so far suppressed that they were just coming out. And so I had to take time to deal with that through mental therapy and stuff like that. So that was an eye opener for me. And just as you said, that's some kind of warning signs and stuff like that. So let me ask you this: other warning signs. Do you think that people commonly ignore those signs when it happens?
Yes, absolutely. They think like, oh, this is who I am. Like if you were always like a person who get pissed off about everything, like
Right, right.
a temper, like like a tempered person, you believe that this is who you are. But because you experience this since teenage years, let's say,
Hmm.
right? But most likely something happened to you when you were a child that you become this reactive, and that's what you carry with you. And then you never dealt with it, but now it's ruining your relationships or ruining your work or
Facts.
whatever, and even your health.
Right.
So when you are in those states, or those low vibrational emotions, you actually also affecting your well-being, jeopardizing your physical health. Yeah.
Okay. So how does unresolved trauma, when you're dealing with unresolved trauma itself, how does it impact you as a person, but more from the physical self? physical side
Yeah,
of it.
so these negative emotions can create diseases in your body. Some people don't even have the mental and the crying or the other because they numb themselves, so
Mhm.
they kind of learn how to deal with these reaction things. And then after they decide like, oh, you know what, I stop reacting because it's weird. So I'm just numb myself and don't have any emotions. So they learn to be like a poker face. But then that deep unresolved trauma is coming up as a physical reaction, like for example stomach pain, digestion issues,
Right.
or heart disease or cancer. There are so many diseases, or diabetes, which is related to these emotions.
Yeah, it's almost like the internal weight, the internal stress of all those things kind of open up your immune system for attack on certain levels. Wow, that's something to definitely link up. I wasn't even catching that until you started talking about it. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. So let me ask you this. What makes holistic healing or this particular domain different from regular traditional therapy?
Yeah, so when someone goes to therapy, they sometimes goes for years, or longer term, because what happens to you in therapy is like speaking therapy. It's called also speaking. Most of them called speaking therapy, which means that you talk about your life, you talk about your experiences, and then your past experiences, and the situation how you feel right now or what's happening to you right now. And what brings this up is creating awareness about your reactions, creating awareness about like, oh, why I am behaving this way or what is actually going on with me. And then also asking, for example, the therapist is guiding you to situations like, what do you think, what happened to you in your childhood, or how is your relationship with your family members or whatever. So where could it come from? But this is like a guessing game. This is like consciously trying to find those
Right.
roots or consciously trying to connect the dots, but is sometimes missing so many layers of the situation. And this is very, very takes you is basically most of the time what we need to acknowledge, we need to let it go, right? The healing is basically letting it go and forgive the past so you can move forward. So in speaking therapy, you need to learn, okay, to control your things. So you maybe also learn about mindfulness, controlling your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions with mindfulness, but also you need to learn let go or forgive. But it's not happening on a subconscious level if you don't know how to access that level. And if it's not happening on subconscious level, it can still linger, on the unconscious or the mind in those memories. So it's the triggers were still coming. The triggers will still be there. You just probably as a much more mindful person, not to react, but just to respond. But it's going to be still, your life is going to be still challenging. So when you go for the holistic approach, what happens is, because you go deep, you get the access to the unconscious mind, you find the specific memories which created your current situation, your current
Hmm.
reactions or disease or whatever it is. So then we just go into, and then we release the negative emotions and we heal those memories. And then we actually clear this from your multidimensional existence, your many layers,
Right.
because the soul is multidimensional. So when we does that, then basically, when we do that, it's basically stopping the triggers, because you learn the lesson, you let it go, it's complete. So you
Right.
don't
Flesh it
need to
out.
get triggered with the same situation anymore. What happens is your life is start changing. You're gonna have different circle of friends, you're gonna have different circle of communities. Maybe you moving, maybe you divorcing. It could happen after healing that things shift and change around you, because the life, like, because you let it go and you forgive, life not don't want to give you the same kind of
Right.
triggers anymore, right?
Right.
So some people who starts healing, it sometimes makes it feel like, oh, there is so many things changing in my life, or there is so unfamiliar, or it's so uncertain what's happening now after I done the healing. But it's also opening a lot of amazing new perspectives. It's giving you a new vision, new perspective, new
Hmm.
ideas.
Yep.
You start to see hope, and you start to see trust, and
New
then you
energy.
start to
Yes.
build up a new life for yourself, what you maybe haven't believed before when you were suffering.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this. So, for people who are like skeptical, like what would bring them to try to fully understand this type of therapy and like maybe embrace it?
Mm, mm. So probably people heard also about hypnotherapy, right? So hypnotherapy is when you already go into the unconscious or the subconscious. You go into that memory and then you release it, but it's still just from the unconscious. It's still not going into many layers, of your soul. And then it's not that complete. Also, they started to use EMDR or other artificial intelligence and scientific machines, which is doing something in your brain and then changing something and in neurological situations, and it's making those energetically shifting those parts, those memories. So basically it's but it's again is not going to release it also from the soul pattern, because sometimes it's not just what you lived in this lifetime. It's often relate to past life memories. When I am healing clients, when I am doing the session with the clients, which called source memory healing, it's similar to quantum hypnosis.
Mhm.
So it's not just hypnotherapy, it's quantum hypnosis, which means it includes like past life regression. So going into also past life things. So what happens is often in a healing session, in source memory healing, let's say current situation, you're going to work, you get pissed off, you're angry with your coworkers, and then you don't know why. So then we're going into this healing session, and then we find out that in your past life something happened to you, and then that's why you are actually behaving like this. So we need to release and heal the past life trauma. But that's not going to happen with an EMDR machine or with, like just hypnotherapy. So it needs to be different layers. And then I also work with clients about ancestral trauma and ancestral karma. And that's not happening also in hypnotherapy or
Right.
EMDR. Why is it so important? Sometimes what trigger you experiencing is coming from ancestral trauma. That's why when I was still an engineer and going into retreats and stuff, I learned a lot about family constellation therapy. So what is
Mhm.
family constellation therapy means is believes that when you heal your ancestors, it's a ripple effect and is actually changing your life as well and the whole lineage. Because sometimes you react a certain way because you inherited some traumatic experiences. And when you do family constellation therapy, what happens is often we think like, oh, our ancestors passed away, they are fine wherever they are because they don't have the physical body, they don't have pain, they're good, right?
Right.
But the truth is they have a spirit too, which is an eternal spirit or eternal soul, which also went through sufferings, right? Traumatic experiences. And they probably didn't know how to release or heal hundreds of years ago, if they were in a Western culture or certain regions. So then that soul, that spirit is still carrying that regret and that pain. So when you use family constellation therapy, basically you invite those spirits into the group of
Conversation.
people, in the group
Right.
of people's physical bodies, and we need to actually initiate and go through the forgiveness between people, between souls. And it was a really amazing experience because I felt in my body those spirits, and then I
Mhm.
felt all of their emotions they had to heal. And it was an insane experience, and then I did it so many times, and then it was just fascinating, to experience someone else's emotions. And
Right.
even I felt love toward a certain person, or I felt certain emotions,
Right.
positive or negative, because it was like
Wow.
a family.
Right.
So we also had to solve relationships between parents and children,
Right.
between couples, between mom and dad, or whatever. So it's basically it's really how you call it, complex when we do this family constellation therapy. But there is an easier way now. So now I'm saying now it's a 60,000 years old practice, but I'm saying now because I learned it later. So later I learned in karma yoga healing that you can do family therapy, basically healing therapies, through accessing the family unconscious through meditation and finding through the meditation and a guided meditation, communicating with your ancestors and finding the root of your current situation, and then release it and heal it through the meditation.
Mm.
So it's everything is like recorded, and you just go step by step, you go follow the guidance, and then you having those images, you having those messages, and you communicate, and then you getting visions and the releases and the healings through this guided process.
Deep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you do that, it's more convenient than having a group of people and a face-to-face meeting.
Right.
You just go with a recording meditation and you do this process. So this is part of my 30 days
Okay.
intensive as well. Yeah.
So I would say for people that are skeptical, like even myself, maybe I was skeptical, like questioning it and stuff like that. I would say, if you exhausted your resources on therapy and you're trying to look for another way to try to deal with trauma or PTSD, this is another avenue because they're all complementing. It's not like one over the other. At least that's my viewpoint of it.
Mm.
Get it all while you can and figure out what works for you. But let me ask you this, because this is something that we talked about when you initially talked to me about it, because I had to go look up some stuff. When it comes to the nervous system itself, like how does that play into all of this?
Yeah, so when people started to speak about nervous system regulation nowadays a lot, right? It's
Yes.
popping up everywhere. And it's just, I think it's a bit scary to read that words because it's like, oh my God, probably I need some person who knows much more than me or having a bigger wisdom to regulate my nervous system because I don't even know what that words mean, right? So I think it's just like a scary message or it's just like telling to people, oh, you can't do this alone or something like that,
Yeah, it can be,
So
yeah.
yeah, but the nervous system regulation is just calming you down. Your nervous system is not regulated when you are, on a fight and fly situation, like your cortisol is spiking high and then you are just like nervous and anxious, and that's when you are not regulated. And then if it happens very often, then definitely you are not regulated. That's when you maybe become very stressed or depressed and so on and so forth. So finding the way to regulate it, there is like different ways, and then everybody can find a different way to calm themselves down, right? And there is the quick fix, how you can calm yourself down, and there is the sustainable one. So the sustainable one we already talked about, finding the root and healing and release it through,
Root
a
cause.
source memory healing or hypnotherapy or EMDR. Or the quick fix is doing something which brings you joy, or brings you great feelings, but on moderation and on a more conscious way. Like, for example, you're gonna be happy if you eat ice cream, but
Right.
don't eat a whole bucket, right? So it basically do something which brings you joy, like dancing, moving
Right.
your body, going
Right.
to the sun, swimming, whatever feels great. And then why people are not regulated? Because they don't take the time for this. They just
Facts.
work, family,
Facts.
family,
100%.
and then
That was me. Yep.
just fall into sleep, and that's it.
Yep.
And if they are lucky, they can fall asleep. If they are
Right.
not, they are like still overthinking and insomnia and all of those things. That's when you are not regulated. But if you just take like half an hour a day or 20 minutes a day and you say, okay, in these 20 minutes, I do something which is really just for me, just maybe even to have a bubble bath or just have a massage or go for a run or have a swim or dance somewhere. But many people not doing it because they are like, oh, I don't want to do it when everybody's at home and they see me,
Right.
or I don't want to sing in the shower, or because I feel like embarrassed. Some
Right.
people is like having these restrictions, and that's why they don't feel like free to do these things which actually
Right.
brings them joy, like jumping up and down
Awesome.
or
No, that's
feel
great
good.
information.
Yeah,
That's great
so
information. So let
that's
me
what.
ask you this, because let me kind of clarify it a little bit. So obviously we want to get down to the root cause of it. That way we can kind of attack it a whole different way. But the quick fixes are more of managing it
Yeah.
for that time being. So some way to, like you said, to calm down your nervous system, to manage it, put a band-aid on it for the moment. But at the end of the day, we still got to get to the root cause. And I think that's very important for the people that's listening. You can band-aid it all day long, but at some point, like Eddie B said, you got to get to the root cause. So can I ask you this? What are some of the biggest misconceptions about the nervous system as far as the regulating it every day, either through meditation or even through this type of therapy?
The misconception is, yeah, again, what you said, that it's like we really have to do it like every day, and people
Right.
don't know that actually there are ways to sustain that regulated nervous system. And the other thing is that kind of the society is created that the way that your nervous system is not regulated, right? Because there is so much expectations from you, and there is so much bad habits, what we
Mm-hmm.
are kind of programmed to do, like drinking caffeine or drinking alcohol, or
Don't say coffee. I love coffee.
those things are
Right.
spiking your cortisol, or doing things to you
Right.
which is putting you into fight and fight. That basically to the level of like unregulated nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then horror movies and the news everywhere, the bad news. And
Yes.
so all
Yes.
of these things is in the society and is constantly dysregulating your nervous system.
So
So it's
so
kind of like you need to go under the rock.
yeah, we got
So,
no, that's a good
I mean,
point. And I was gonna say,
setting
yeah,
boundaries. Yeah.
like set boundaries and just detach. Like sometimes you gotta
Yeah,
detach. And I'm starting to do that. Like get home, just put the phone down, like just detach from the world so you can kind of calm yourself back down. And I think
exactly.
that's actually a good point. And I hope the listeners are listening that, you know, take a moment to detach, see what's going on with you. How can you pacify some of the issues that's going on, either by singing, dancing, or doing something that you love doing or like doing. But at the end of the day, like Eddie B said, you still got to get to the root cause, and that's kind of the main target area of what you want to get at. Um, but as we move on, when it comes to high achievers, like as they struggle, like what does that look like for high achievers? Because you got some people that's highly ambitious that never slow down, but yet there are some of the people who need some of the most therapy per se.
Yeah, some of them never realize, they're pushing through, and then they only realize it when there is a wake up call, and the wake up call is maybe an accident or a disease, or someone dies in the family, or they go through grief or divorce. So these people usually realize they need to change or they need to look for some different lifestyle, different habits, different way of living when there is a wake up call in their life, because until that they're just pushing through. So it's really interesting, or kind of difficult to get those people into this kind of routine, to actually acknowledge that you need to change your habits. You need to have, there is a saying like, if you don't have 20 minutes a day to meditate, then you need to start meditating.
Mm,
So there is a saying. So
I
it's
like
like,
that.
it's like having that awareness that you can't push yourself so much all the time, because eventually you're going to pay for it.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this. So let's talk about the application, the practical steps of it. Like what practical steps can people take today based off of, your experience, your knowledge, your training, how you go about, your therapy with other clients? Like what can people actually do?
Yeah, so we talked about only the one of the layer or two layers of my healing modality, because it's actually a three layer, and it's also going into other aspects of the healing. So it's not just about the soul and the spirit. We need to also acknowledge the body, right, and the mind. So we talked about the mindfulness as well. It's really important to think like, okay, I need to think positively. I shouldn't assume always the bad or the negative
Right.
things. So you need to find to communicate or get the information right, so you don't assume, right, and then you
Hmm.
can have more positive thinkings. So it's changing habits about how you deal with people, changing habits about how you deal with yourself, how you control your emotions, and how you like taking action in certain situations, so you see the consequences of your actions as well. So that's the mindfulness part. And there is the body part, because often why you feeling stressed or anxious is because you are lacking vitamins, nutrients, minerals in your body, and it's creating that the more, how you call it, um, having this deficiency, basically creating that cortisol spike, or creating whatever you feel meant. Like, for example, panic attacks can be caused because lack of sleep, but also because you don't have iron or vitamin B or magnesium in your system, right? So then you are more anxious, have that high anxiety, which turns into a panic if you feel
Yep.
like out of control, let's say,
That's
or
exactly
or
how it works.
things
Yep.
like that. So it's basically, when I start to work with the clients, the first thing I ask is like, what kind of habits you have? What do you eat? What diet you do? Like, when do you sleep? Or what things you do during a day? It's really important to know, because often even though they have maybe PTSD, it shouldn't always become a really high-level anxiety or panic attack or whatever it is if they have a healthy lifestyle. What they can maybe have, like insomnia or flashbacks or memory flashes, or some anger issues or anxiety. But the panics or the depression, or those can have also because of lack of vitamins and nutrients in the body.
Okay. Based off of your interactions with clients and stuff like that, when it comes to, some people got different layers of things that they're dealing with, different traumas. And you talk about like fixing or changing habits. Should they fix or change habits one at a time, or should they can do multiple things at different times?
So what is recommended is like, okay, you make a list. So how you can start with it? You make a list of the negative habits you want to change, right? And then you make another list, let's say the positive habits you want to implement. And it's always recommended to do one at a time, because if you do more, then you could feel frustrated if you quit, like, oh my God, it's
Right.
too much changes and then I
Yep.
can't deal with it. And then you just quit.
Yeah.
So you can experience it yourself. You can try too if you feel it's easy. I mean, if you feel like, oh, it's actually easy and I can handle it, then you can try
Right.
more. But
Right.
it's like if you really want to have like sustainable results and then you want to try out once, then it's just like one at a time. And then what I also recommend is when it's about a negative habit to drop, is like how you start with it is like you make it really difficult for yourself to actually do that habit. Like if that habit is watching TV before you go to sleep, then take the TV out of your bedroom, right?
Yep.
Or if it's
Facts. Yeah.
smoking, you want to quit smoking, then don't buy cigarettes anymore and don't hang out with people who smokes for a while, right?
Right.
So just make it easier for you to go around it. The other thing is, why is the spiritual healing so important with mindfulness and the body?
Hmm.
Because when you do the spiritual healing and you heal those roots, these kind of changes, the habits and the mindfulness come effortlessly, because you already at the pivot, like you're already there, like, oh, I actually ready for this change because I see things already on a different way, and then I
Hmm.
already opened up that kind of portal for my new life when I'm more higher vibrational, and then I'm kind of, so when you are on that higher frequency. So why I'm talking about frequency? Frequency is like everything is energy, right? So everything
Hmm.
is energy, and emotion is energy in motion. So the emotions has also energies, frequencies. So when you are in a lower vibrational emotion, let's say sad, angry, feeling betrayed, guilt, shame. If you are in those lower vibrational or grief, then you are in a low frequency, like your whole body is vibrating in a lower vibrational
Right.
energy. And then you are more likely to do negative habits. You are more open to drinking or drugs or addictions, all of these things. So when you're raising your vibration due to the meditations, due to the healings, due to the practices we do together, then basically you start to feel naturally that you don't want to do those things anymore. And then you are
Right.
more open to positive things, which is helping, which is aligned with your energy, right?
Right. Which is awesome. So now, for us people like me, sometimes when we feeling stuck, like we're like stuck in this rut, and like how do we stay motivated? I guess, like, what do you tell someone who's feeling stuck?
So when I get clients who feel like stuck, they also feel like kind of lost. So it means like, okay, I don't like how is my life going right now, but I don't
Hmm.
know where to next. Right. So they don't have that vision. They don't have those ideas like where I could move forward. So that's when they feel stuck. Right. So why is it happening? Is it happening because you have trust issues? You have trust issues in yourself, in others, and also with the universe, because we're talking about spirituality here, so which means you are connected with your higher self and with the universe as well. So when you are in when you are in a low vibrational energies with low vibrational emotions, your energy centers, which is connect you to the universe, are also blocked. And one of the energy center, which is allowing you to trust and allowing you to bring in new ideas and visions, is your third eye. And the third eye chakra is opening through this meditation, which I practice with the clients and through the healings. So when you're opening that third eye, it's basically you start bringing in new ideas. You start seeing your vision. You start feeling more empowered and more motivated through that. It's so interesting. So when I have clients, they literally come to me with depression, feeling stuck or feeling betrayed, like after
Right.
divorce, after grief, after certain situations, and then we start the process, and at the end of the 30 days they a different person. They some of them is like coming up with new books, some of
Right.
them opening up a podcast or moving into a brand new town, and then
Right.
it's just like they open up so much, and then they is able to also welcome this change more positively because they
Right.
start trusting. So the
Right.
trust is the issue here, like, because also you don't want to move forward when you don't trust yourself. You feel like, oh, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm unable to complete what I need to do? So it's this three trust which needs to build back.
Okay. That goes into my next question. Like, what does this healing actually look like? And you kind
Hmm.
of hint off on it a little bit.
Yeah. So basically, when I start with my clients, is I ask them to start meditating a certain meditation, because there are like hundreds, thousands of kinds of meditations out there,
Right.
right? You can meditate so many ways. My favorite meditation is called samadhi. So in this samadhi meditation, like it takes 15-20 minutes till you get actually to the delta brainwaves. So the meditation itself is a guided part, and then the 15-20 minutes is when you actually experience in that getting into the meditative state to delta brainwaves, theta or delta. It depends how good you are or how practiced you are. So these 15 minutes bring you to that state, and then you experiencing that delta brainwaves, and you stay there for a while to experience it, because that's the point when you can get the access to your unconscious mind or to the family unconscious when you want to work with one of those, right? And then it also helps you in producing more of certain necessary hormones like melatonin, serotonin, oxytocin, and growth hormones. So when you are in deep sleep at night, you experience this for 1 or 2 hours, like between 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. That's when you are in delta brainwaves. That's when you produce these hormones. Some people who are suffering from insomnia, they're lacking these hormones, because
Hmm.
they don't go into delta brainwaves. So this samadhi can also help you with these hormones. And what these hormones done to you is like bringing you more focus, better sleep, a better mood, also more kindness, more compassion, and also a more vital body. So if you want to have all of those, then
Right.
meditate this meditation more often. So I give them the direction to do this every day for like the first week. And then we meet once a week. And then the first week we do the source memory healing about the most urgent situation they
Right.
have.
Right.
Let's say it's why I'm crying, all the time. Let's say that. And then we find the memories why. Or let's say it's an anger issue, or let's say it's a physical health issue, like they have like, I don't know, certain pain in their whatever area, or something. So then we go into the memories and we find it and we release it. So that's like a 2-hour session.
Hmm.
And then the interesting thing is that it's not like a speaking therapy. I don't need to know what happened to you, because some people is not feeling comfortable to share their stories or
Right.
memories with someone who they
Right.
never met. So in this process, you don't need to tell me what do you see. You just tell me how it makes you feel. And even if you don't want to tell me how it makes you feel, there is an option that you actually place it into my sentence when I do the release, how you
Right.
feel in your mind, because everything is connected energetically. So then it still works. So at the end is when we do the release in every memory, we need to also forgive. Some people say like, how can I forgive when it was such a terrible situation,
Hmm.
right? Then again, when we go through this release and then I explain them certain things, they eventually get to the point that yes, they can forgive. So it's happening, and then we can move to the next memory. And that's the source memory healing. And then they also get access to my life transformation system course, which is a video material that they can go through like 20 minutes every week. And then they learn basically the background of, vibrations, ancestors,
Right.
positive thinking, whatever it is. So we don't lose time on me explaining them all the things during the
Right. Right.
session,
Right.
right? So they can do that themselves. And then we go through these 4 weeks, and then every week I give them different meditations to practice. There is also the ancestral healing meditations and then the karma healing meditation. So there is different meditations they can practice the 4 weeks.
Right.
And at the end, basically, we kind of heal what they came for to heal. So let's say if they were coming to me to heal a certain life situation, like I had a lady who came to me because she had abused relationship with her father, like back in
Hmm.
the days when she was young, and now they are grandparents and they're coming to the house still to look after the
Mm.
grandchildren, and she still see him every day, and she has that
Right.
inter feelings like how I should behave, how I should feel about this. I'm still hurt. So we had to hear that. And then she's been to speaking therapy for years. She was dealing with this for decades because she was in her
Right.
30s
Yeah.
already, right? So what happened we started to do the work about this, and then we did maybe the first week we went into it and healed it, but then the second week she can come up with the next situation, like let's say how is her relationship with the husband, or
Right.
let's see then the next situation, like in the 4 different sessions we can deal with 4 different aspects of their life,
Right.
so it's a kind of complex. But then if something happens later after the 30 days, let's say 2 months later they meet someone or they get a new job or there is like a new situation in their life, and they feel triggered again, that's like a different kind of story. That's like it's related
Mm.
to something we haven't healed because
Interesting.
that wasn't present in that time yet, the trigger. So it could be that, yes, after the 30 days, you got triggered by other things later. But what we healed, what was urgency, that can be healed in 30 days
Right.
and bring you a brand new, fresh start.
Mm. Eddie B, this is all great information, and I think you need to go on a TED Talk with this one because this is very informative, and I'm pretty sure everybody that's listening to it, um, they got a lot of questions. So I'm just curious how many questions are going to get flooded. So as we close out this interview, um, what message would you give to someone that's listening right now that's struggling? Like, what would you tell them?
To never give up to find solution. So it's like this kind of mental or even physical issues, they are not a life sentence. There is always a solution out there. So it's just to do it, to get the courage to try new things, and just
Absolutely.
and there is always a saying, like, if you are actually listening to this, it's a sign that you had to listen to this because
Right.
it's your sign to actually take action on
I
it,
like
right?
that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that. So Eddie B Kiss. So I need to know, or we need to know the handles, like your social handles, so people can contact you or look at your information. I know you got a couple of different social handles out there. So how could people get in contact with you or just follow up with the information that you put out?
Yeah, so my website is my name, edithbkis.com. So if someone goes to my website, they can even book a call with me, a free synergy session to ask more questions and then see how we can work together. And then also all my social handles are on my website. So they can just click and then go to my Instagram or my I have a YouTube channel and a playlist. So if someone wants to try this samadhi meditation or other meditations, couple of meditations is there on my playlist to try. And then also I have a playlist about my show. I had a show last year, Release with Ease, and there is like proper healing classes there in many aspects. So people can try
Awesome.
those out before they come for real sessions, real programs.
Eddie B, I appreciate you coming to the podcast. I know you reached out to me months ago. I was transitioning retirement, moving up to Rhode Island from Virginia, and I'm glad you stuck it out with me because you could have just turned me down, so I'm not doing it. But anyway, hey, this is Grit Beyond Measure. Eddie B, great host, great interview process with her talking about holistic treatment when it comes to trauma, getting down to the root cause of everything, and then ways to apply this information. So please go check out our handle, give a like, subscribe, and as I always say, you know what it is: adapt, survive, and thrive. We're out.
Let's go!